Dusk is an old-school throwback first-person shooter made in the Unity engine. Is this Unity-made game any good or is it bad like the majority games developed in that engine? Stick with this review to find out. Dusk is a game made by just one guy, David Szymanski. This is extremely impressive. Most games developed by a single guy and in the Unity engine tend to be of poor quality. I'm happy to report that that's not the case with Dusk. This is an old-school shooter with little to no story, primarily focused on gameplay, frantic action and bunny hopping. This game was in early access and I tend to stay far away from unfinished products. After a while it got a full release and that release is what we're reviewing today. The game is divided into 3 episodes and each episode consists of about 11 levels. The first episode will take you around farms and generally rural areas, and this is the best episode in the game, in my opinion. The enemy design is top-notch here, with cultists, chainsaw-wielding dudes, rats, etc. It's really good design. Then the second episode is a mixed bag. It's mostly military complexes and industrial-type environments. It's fine for the most part and you get to see more of possessed military men as your enemy. You still see cultists and the enemies from the previous episode, with new ones being introduced, like the military dudes I just mentioned. Then there's the third episode, called The Nameless City. It has a more varied thematic style with locations like cathedral, cellar, open-type arenas and more. The third episode is the culmination of everything. The level design is top-notch, there's tons of enemy types and a new weapon also. I deliberately didn't talk about the story, because in an old-school shooter of this type, it's not really an important thing. Dusk has a basic story. In some farm area, some ruins appear and the government tries to set up labs and sends the military to try harnessing the power of these ruins. All goes wrong, demonic presence appears and corrupts all involved. The whole town is isolated from the rest of the world. You, Dusk Dude, hear about this isolated town and that there's treasure to be found there, and you go in search of treasures. Apparently, you're a treasure hunter. And then the game begins. It actually has a cool reveal at the end, which of course I won't spoil for you. But it's nothing to write home about, and it doesn't matter, because Dusk is all about frantic action. It has a good roster of death-dealing weapons. You start off with sickles, and this is a melee type weapon. It deals low damage at point-blank range. Then there's the pistol, which can be dual-wielded. The shotgun is powerful and can also be dual-wielded, because why not? Automatic rifle has a fast rate of fire and is good for crowd control. Of course, this wouldn't be a retro shooter without the super shotgun. And it's present here. It fires 2 shells per shot and does massive damage, with reducing enemies to blood-soaked powder at close range. And the sound it produces, this is the best sounding super shotgun I've ever heard. Then there's the hunting rifle, a powerful weapon that does high damage at any range. The crossbow is, I feel, an underrated weapon in this game. It fires a green penis-shaped arrow and pierces through enemies. A perfect weapon for lower tier cultist enemies. Just look. The mortar is a very powerful weapon that is basically a grenade launcher. It fires grenades that can be activated by pressing the right mouse key. Then there's the Riveter, the most powerful weapon in the whole game. It's a rocket launcher, and its damage output is really overpowered. The only problem I found is that the Riveter and the Mortar look almost the same, making it hard to see what you're using in battle without firing a shot first. You also have a cigar, which replenishes your health very slowly. There's even some temporary power-ups like extra health, faster firing rate, time moving only when you move, etc. Cool stuff. In episode 3, you get your hands on the sword, a very powerful melee weapon. If you have full health, you can charge the shot and kill most low and mid-tier enemies in one hit. You get it in episode 3, but I think it's possible to acquire it even in the first 2 episodes. But it's a secret weapon in those 2 episodes, I think. Speaking of secrets, well, this wouldn't be a retro shooter without some secrets. The levels are filled with them, and you can find weapons earlier, ammo, treasure, that sort of stuff. I have to talk about the enemies a little bit. There are so many different types, it's really good. I don't think that there's a single hit-scan enemy in the game, which is the way it's supposed to be. They are either melee or projectile-based. I despise the rats. It's a small enemy that is really annoying due to it being very small and hard to hit. You'll be fighting cultists, scarecrows, possessed military personnel, flying enemies, etc. Wendigo is a very interesting enemy. It looks like a clear skeleton from Serious Sam games. Until you hit it first, it's an invisible enemy. And then there's some fantastic visual and audio cues to help you find out where it is. I also like the dog in a cage enemy. I'm not sure what it's actually called. It's basically a demonic dog running around in his wooden cage. When you kill it, it explodes along with his cage. Generally, enemy design is top notch. You also will fight a boss sometimes, or even multiple bosses. I liked all of them. None were too hard, and if you have experience with old school shooters or arena shooters, you'll be fine. Just bunny hop and you're golden. Speaking of bunny hopping, you know what's missing? A harder clump sound from your feet when you land on the ground or when you stop bunny hopping, like in Quake 3. I believe the game has a sound for that, but it's actually very quiet. The level design is great. I rarely got lost and everything is visually memorable. You mostly have to find color keys for doors or activate switches in order to progress. It's old school design and I'm good with it. It's not that convoluted. There are annoying levels. Most are great, but some are duds. In episode 3, there's a level which involves shifting perspective. You activate some rune and the world flips around. It's so bad that I almost broke my keyboard while raging. Then there's some levels with reduced visibility, caves and the likes. You have a flashlight, but you basically have 70% of your screen black and the rest is visible. I really see no need for this, and these levels with reduced visibility due to darkness were pretty bad. This game supports quick saving and I really like this, but there's this pause when you initiate a quick save. The game just stops for a second. I don't understand, is this intentionally so, or is it a limitation of the Unity engine? It's not game breaking, but can be annoying sometimes. Even the audio stops. Speaking of game breaking, I haven't encountered any game breaking bugs except at the very end of the game. I had to restart the whole last boss because I entered the fight without weapons. This game is made in the Unity engine. It's an engine famous for terrible and shoddy games. This was my fear going into Dusk, but I was wrong. It performs awesome, and this is not some vaporware game made by talentless people using stock assets. David is clearly a very talented person. It looks good for what it's trying to achieve. It's trying to emulate a retro look and feel, and it succeeds in that. You can even make it look worse, if that's your thing, by moving this slider. I just left it there at stock settings. I'm not even gonna say what type of PC you should get to play this, because it will run on basically anything, maybe even a toaster. The music is awesome in this game, a mix of metal and eerie ambiental sounds. Really high quality stuff. When the action kicks off, expect some blood-pumping metal music. It's composed by Andrew Hulshultz, and basically he's doing music in every throwback retro shooter nowadays. There are 5 difficulty options present in the game, and I played the game on the third one, which is supposed to be normal, I guess. It was pretty normal. There's even an endless mode, which is, as the name suggests, a mode where the enemies spawn endlessly and you try to stay alive as long as possible. I think there's even a multiplayer option here, but I haven't tried it. The campaign should take you around 7 to 10 hours to complete, depending on your skill. At the time of writing this review, Dusk is around €11 or $13 on the GOG's website, and I think it's worth every penny. If you're in a mood for some high-quality throwback retro shooter, Dusk is a great choice. If I had to give a score to this game, I'd give it 9.1 out of 10.